Okay. Yes?
If the guy on the bike took 8 months to learn it, if he did some FIs, would they be quicker? Like, seriously?
I reckon if he took a Feldenkrais approach to learning and broke the task down into smaller parts, he might learn quicker. I was just reflecting that when I was little, my first two-wheeler bike had trainer wheels on, or there was somebody kind of hanging onto the back while I learnt to balance and do some of those things. And in Feldenkrais, we break functions and tasks down into little pieces that we can try one at a time and then put the bits together, which seems to speed up the learning process no end. So that's my personal opinion.
I think one good answer to that is, I know some people, there's a very entertaining series of recent programs on ABC called Change My Brain by a guy called Todd Sampson, who's a very A-type personality, climbed Everest and all that sort of stuff. But he deliberately set himself pretty serious challenges, to be honest, but to do it in a very short period of time. And he was actually doing things like learning to tightrope walk a 10-story building in 3 months, as opposed to what the people who teach him would say would take 10 years, or learning to crack a safe within a couple of weeks, which again would take normally 10 years, and using, sort of various approaches, but basically, assuming that he could teach his brain or allow his brain to learn quicker and better in different ways. So they're called Change My Brain. There were two series of 3 programs. They're very entertaining and very thought-provoking.
Sure. Okay, so now I've got a question for you. Last week we started talking about listening for what people want and need. Did anyone manage to eavesdrop or have any conversations that gave you any clues? Up the back.
Body language.
Body language? What did you get?
Oh, how are you? And the person they wanted a hug.
Right. There's a lot of that going about. You might like to start your classes with group hugs when you set up to practice, or not. Okay, so just to kind of continue on this thought about how in the past people have gone about providing services and goods to other people, and how things have changed out there in the world to come more into line with our thinking. Let's have a look at the traditional business approach. In the past, as I think I mentioned last week, people would decide what their business was. Am I a grower of apples? Am I a maker of fine bows and arrows? Am I a butcher, a hairdresser, or an accountant? And we would start off by defining, who am I? What do I do? And then we would start to say, well, let me describe the goods and services that I have, that I'm putting on display for you. And then I would think about what channels of communication might I use to inform you about what I do. And it was a lot easier in the old days. You could kind of put an ad in the Saturday Age if you had a workshop or a course running, and people knew to go and look there. You could put signs on notice boards in places where people gathered, or in kind of newsletters that circulated to particular groups. But these days, print media and that sort of thing is not being as widely read. And so finding people out there in the world is much harder to do. If you want something, do you kind of wait until you get an advertisement coming into your email, or do you kind of hop on Google and go looking for what you want, and if it's not available in the local shopping centre, you know, you buy it from Turkey or Timbuktu or whatever, and it arrives in the post sometime later. So the old kind of expectation that if I do these things then the people will come is not a strategy that works well anymore. And there are some really classic examples of how that used to work but nearly drove incredibly successful businesses to the brink of bankruptcy. So some of you will remember watches and clocks, and the standard of watches and clocks was a Swiss-made watch. Those were the people who knew how to make mechanical timepieces to the highest standards and quality. So if you wanted a good one, you bought a Swiss one. And it was actually a Swiss watchmaker who discovered the quartz crystal movement and thought it was a fascinating anomaly, like a toy, and took it to one of the big international trade fairs as a gimmick, because everybody knows that's not how you make a fine timepiece. And an enterprising Japanese gentleman took one look at it, bought the rights, and suddenly the bottom fell out of the Swiss watch and clock market. Many of us now have digital timepieces or timepieces that are powered by a quartz crystal, and so that was very nearly a disaster, and probably was for many traditional family-operated businesses. Some of us remember typewriters. I've still got a couple in my cupboard. Can't quite figure out what to do with them, but you want one?
Absolutely.
Oh. Right, okay. See me later. Mechanical or electric?
Mechanical.
Hopefully.
Wow. Okay. There was a company called the International Business Machine Company that made reputable typewriters and calculating machines, and the world kind of changed a little bit, and they very nearly went bankrupt too. In fact, they kind of caught up for a while and very nearly went bankrupt again, because the next generation of managers and directors kind of missed the point in the market a little bit too. And some of you remember photography, where you used film. Kodak was one of the bigger manufacturers of film, and then suddenly we all got digital cameras, and now we don't even have cameras, we just have phones. And Kodak sacked a lot of people and tried to reduce costs and save money, and very nearly went to the wall. And so what had to happen with these organisations was that they had to change the way they were thinking. They had to stop saying, this is what I sell, and start to redefine themselves in terms of what need out there can we meet? What do people want that we could actually use our skills and our resources to find a way of meeting? And it's quite a Feldenkrais approach, and it's one that will serve us well when we start talking to people about coming to classes or coming to lessons or trying to build a practice that is sustainable. So a flexible approach is now what's taught in business schools. So the Swiss got together and came up with the brand Swatch. It was kind of big a while back. I haven't seen it advertised a lot recently, but then I'm not particularly in the market. They're big again? Okay. Whoops. Go away. Go away. Let's just go here and have a look at their website. I found this quite fascinating. Collectively, the Swatch Group's 18 watch brands address all segments of the market. Each brand carries its own distinct cachet, and each positions its products to appeal to different and completely and complementary audiences. So they recognise that different people want different things. And so rather than trying to make one size that fits all or that meets everybody's need, they know that some people want to wear a piece of jewellery. Some people want something that will tolerate the sort of impacts and rough environment of sport. Some people need something that will keep working underwater. You know, there's a whole lot of different market segments that have different needs and interests. And so when they started to listen to what people wanted, they were able to use their skills to come up with something that allowed them to make a living again. IBM recognised that people wanted computers, and not just computers, which was where they got stuck the second time around, but what they now offer recognising that the world has changed a great deal, is a flexible approach that can address your needs at any point in your service optimisation journey. So they're talking to me as an individual. It's not even me as a kind of a collective group of customers. It's a tailored approach to my particular situation. And so they're still in the market. Where's my cursor gone? Kodak Does anybody know how to get the cursor back?
Just minimum.
There it is. You've got that screen. Yeah, interesting. It's probably why I can't see it on this one. Okay, Kodak realised that they were in the image business. That, I don't know if you remember, but when digital cameras first came out, people used to sort of pass them around and you'd look at their holiday snaps on these tiny wee screens. And people kind of eventually said, no, we want photos. We want to be able to print things, we want to have photo albums and photo books and good things like that. So Kodak shifted its focus to start making papers and various other interesting things, and now what do they say? They've got a whole lot of different sort of related imaging technologies, and they say the breadth of these core technologies enables Kodak to create functionality beyond visual communications through printing processes. So they've kind of taken this whole function of creating images and allowing people to see things, and again looking at ways to come up with unique solutions. Just going backwards. Let's go forwards. So the virtual question that they had to ask, and that we want to start practicing asking, is how can I meet this person's needs? And we've talked a little bit this week about starting to ask questions with your hands. The same sort of questions we're going to practice asking with our voices. It involves listening, sometimes listening with your eyes first, sometimes just moving around observing, listening to what people are saying, or listening if somebody asks for help. What is it that they think they want, and can we frame our offer in terms of something that makes sense to them? And one of the things that we'll talk a lot more about later on is people often will come saying, I have a pain in my neck or my shoulder or whatever, and our challenge is to acknowledge their reality, to listen and to affirm their concern, but somehow to shift that into something that they are interested in learning about. Because we don't fix things, we help people learn new options and find ways of improving what it is that they do. And listening often then is prompted or will prompt questions. So the questions you've been practicing with your hands are things like, is this clearer or is this clearer? How far through your system can you feel this movement? Is this pressure giving you more or less information? And so when we start to get into verbal conversations with people that we want to practice with or work with, then these same sort of questions are going to be important. What is it that is going to make a difference in your life? And we might need to get a little beyond, well, I just want the pain to go away. Because if we want to engage people in a learning process, then connecting to something that actually has meaning for them is going to be far more effective at sustaining that ongoing curiosity and interest. So is it that they would really like to be able to have some of those things that you identified the other day? You know, the ability to stay engaged with their community, to play golf, or to be able to get down and be on the floor with the grandkids, or continue to do their work, or enjoy whatever hobby or sport that they have been able to do up until now but are finding has become limited for them. So I've got some questions which may be language that you wouldn't find familiar or that you wouldn't imagine yourself using. There are a bunch of questions that were put together by a trainer over in the States, and maybe they're more culturally appropriate there, I'm not sure. But what I would like you to do is to have a go at finding your own words to ask those sorts of questions, to have a conversation in pairs where you look for a way to maybe begin a conversation that would lead to an opportunity to begin to ask questions that help a person connect with the meaning in their request or the meaning behind their concern. So, what would you like more of in your life? If they're talking about something that they're not able to do anymore, what do you miss most about that? And if you had that, what would that mean to you? Now, I don't know if in the last few days when you've had people putting their hands on you, you've had a sense that whatever you do, your microphone falls off. Have you had that moment when you really felt a kind of a connection with somebody else, that they were really paying attention to what was happening in your system? And that allowed you to pay attention to yourself with a different kind of quality. And maybe you've had experiences where you've been chatting with a friend or someone and just, in that moment you really felt that someone was taking you seriously, really listening to what you wanted to say, and just maybe asking some questions that prompted you to think differently, to look at something from a different perspective, to take a different angle on something. try a different way of thinking, and that led you to feeling differently or better about whatever it was you were discussing. Now, a couple of weeks back, I asked the group up in Sydney to have a go at these, and some of them did. Some of them tried to use pretty much those questions or a variation that felt comfortable to them. Some of them couldn't quite bring themselves to even try that, and they just had a bit of a chat, and they felt like they got to know each other better. But the ones that stayed closest to finding a way to practice saying words like that had quite a different experience. And so I would encourage you to give it a go. Even if it feels a little unfamiliar or a little awkward, see what it's like to try those questions or something that is kind of similar, and see what effect that has. So if you would choose a partner, one of you gets to ask the question first. One of you gets the chance to experience what's it like to have someone ask and then listen. So if you can avoid a chat and practice ask, wait for the response, listen, and then ask another question from that list, see how that goes. Okay?
So it's not like each person asking each other a question, it's more...
No, we'll swap afterwards. So there'll be a questioner and a responder. Look, you can find a way to see if you can lead into that, like what's life like for you, or how's tricks, or whatever. If you can't think of anything like that, you could imagine together that this person has said, I heard about Feldenkrais and somebody said it might be helpful for me. Yep, that'll do.
She does.